So welcome to sunny Watford. If this was in Slough, it would all feel so different, wouldn't it? We'd be repositioning Slough with sunshine. For those of you who saw, is the house, I didn't notice in the taxi, is the house still there, the Integer house?
Yes, still there.
Yeah, I was involved in building that 20 years ago with the Integer lot. And it's funny when you the conversations we had 20 years ago about Integer are so similar to the conversations that are going on right now about, from what you've heard Andy say. I do worry about this country of ours, that we kind of tread water and stay in the same area and don't necessarily progress in the way that we could. So quality. I remember working on the Channel Tunnel project 26 years ago, and quality was the maxim in construction. And we had something called BS 5750, which was a management system standard, and quality used to mean writing down what you were going to do and making bloody sure that you did it, even if it was crap. And in fact, it was something that came from the defence industry, the American defence industry. And in fact, BRE did some research, I don't know if you remember at the time, if you were around, where they found that a BS 5750 certified site had more building defects than a non-certified BS 57. And the reason was because the site manager spent all his bloody time dealing with paperwork and checklists rather than getting out there and kicking arses around the site. So beware. I mean, that wasn't regulation, you see, that was actually private initiative. It wasn't government driven at all. So beware bureaucracy from any direction, whether it's government or within your own company. So the first question I've got is sustainability part of quality? And I would say, well, no, in terms of why you should do it, but certainly yes, in terms of the outcomes that you get from it. I mean, I once said in a I think it was in the AJ about a project, people don't ask for sustainability, but they like what they get from it. But I would say sustainability isn't part of quality in terms of why you do it, because I think it's a moral imperative. Now, some people might say, you're not in touch with business, mate. Well, actually, I'm a businessman. And if you look at people like Peabody and Rowntree, great Victorian business philanthropists and businessmen in their own right, they felt that a moral attitude is the right thing for business, as well as in its as the right thing to do for its own sake. So I would say, in this world of semi-Corbyn and semi-Theresa May, where's it all going? Business is about fulfilment and it's not about greed. We begin to see with Philip Green now that we're getting to the unacceptable face of capitalism, aren't we, all over again as we did in the early 70s. And I think it's gone, I think probably a lot of us feel, it's gone too far the other way. Just put your hand up. Who feels that the Philip Green thing signals that things have gone a bit too far, free market wise, etc., etc.? Yeah, it has, hasn't it? It's gone a bit too far. But I would say sustainability is part of quality in terms of it delivers, because inherently, if you build something sustainability, you will build it better, and that's because of the disciplines that sustainability imposes on you. We've heard about the performance gap. You know more about it than I do, I hope. And certainly, if you're going to get buildings to perform to spec, you do have to build them well and build them carefully. That delivers quality. I'm just seeing actually on Twitter, someone's tweeted something. It comes up as we can get a feedback thing going here, couldn't we? Better materials. I think with sustainability, one will be inclined to use better materials. Similarly, the daylighting will be better. I mean, I think we've all been round to show houses and seen the lights on in the bloody show house, but when you go round, when the sales rep leaves and you turn all the lights off, it gets pretty dark, and you think, well, that's not right, let's get proper daylighting. But you will find also, with regard to the performance gap and those drivers, energy systems will work better in a sustainable building. And as Andy has pointed out, if it's sustainable, you do get better you should have better space standards. So the bottom line with sustainability is it is requiring a higher level of technical competency than you would normally get in any comparable building which is non-sustainable, and that's no small difference. I'm sure some of you will remember, I'm showing my age here, but people like Taylor Woodrow years ago at Southall had a pretty serious in-house technical and R&D department, and it was a marvellous thing. One of my friends from uni spent a summer working there, and it was just quite something. Well, pretty much all of that has gone. So what's happened, post the recession in the early 90s, really, is that an awful lot of technical competency has gone out of the industry, and that has made it vulnerable to not being able to deliver on sustainability. So the reaction that we had, in our last recession, I would say, is because the industry just did not have the technical competency to deal with these challenges. So I don't see that as a matter of bureaucracy. I see it as a matter of a lack of technical competency. So I say to the contractors, get your bloody R&D and your technical departments back again and make those proper investments. I mean, the Technology Strategy Board and Innovate UK are very generous people, but you do have to wonder why they're giving large sums of money to companies that make large sums of money. It doesn't seem to make an awful lot of sense to me. But quality is also about the quality of people and the quality of the environment that they work in and the quality of the company. So quality has to be right through everything. You cannot build good buildings with slapdash people who are not properly trained, haven't got the right attitude, and who are not properly managed. So this is something which has to shine through everything. A poor company will not make quality products, and poorly managed and motivated people are incapable of producing quality things. But I'd also say, when we think about climate change, we're going to have to think much more carefully now about adaptability and flexibility to climate change. It's kind of the elephant in the room, and I'm still seeing designs on developments where I'm either there as a developer from architects or there in a promotional capacity, where a large number of people in the industry are clueless about what needs to be done in terms of climate change adaptation. And one of the first things that needs to be done is people need to be thinking about shading. You cannot have a superinsulated building that is not shaded. It is anathema. There's a lot of talk about flooding and flood risk with climate change adaptation, but clearly flood risk doesn't apply everywhere. So, but we are seeing now, as I'm sure some of you know, the gutter is having to get bigger now with storm surges. And in fact, there are a number of landlords in London in particular now who are in fact replacing their gutters so that they can take the deluges that we're now seeing through climate change. So I'm sure there are none in the room, but for the people who just don't think climate change is happening, for those who think it's not going to happen, it's already actually on us. So I just want to talk about a number of factors in housing. How much longer have I got?
Another 3 or 4 minutes.
3 or 4 minutes, yeah. Home as a consumer product. I think there is some difficulty in my mind that we conceive of the home as a consumer product. We think of a house, a car, a television, a set of furniture. I think we've got to recognise that a home is something different. This is habitat for human beings. I don't think we should think of it quite in the same way as we do. I think also we're subject to a lot of political dogma these days, more than ever, and that the government somehow sees itself as giving people housing. I would say we've got to enable people to build their own houses fundamentally, and if they then want to default to buying a house, that's obviously fine, but I would say it should be an intrinsic right. We're a great country of makers, inventors and doers, and in fact when Napoleon said we're a nation of shopkeepers, he didn't mean that in the current use of the word shopkeeper. What he meant was we were makers and artisans who also sold out the stuff that we made. That's what he meant by shopkeepers. And in many ways, that's, I feel, something we're going to have to go back to, is we're going to have to find ways of designing meaningful work. And if you look at the amount of investment in housing development and construction, the possibilities are all there. So what I would say is if we do continue to retrench into traditionalism that seems to be happening, Brexit, traditionalism, grammar schools, traditionalism, then I think we need to be thinking about what is the real essence of the British person, probably the English person now, actually. And I would say it is about, personal initiative and having the guts and the character to take on your own challenges in life, pull your own socks up and build your own bloody house. So I would say give people the tools, the land and the mortgages to do that as the default setting. And in terms of quality, I'm sure we've all seen these custom built homes. They're often way better in quality than anything a house builder would do. So if you want to improve the quality of the housing stock, shift the bias of delivery to custom build, and I'm sure you'll see there's an enormous increase in quality. I think the other thing is, we do see the home as a repository of the nuclear family, and that's actually a sociological point. I was talking to Guy earlier, who's doing a tremendous job in co-housing, with his kids all being with him. But in a sense, anthropologically, that is our sort of natural state. Is it right that we think of the home as a castle? Take the example of Denmark. 50% of people in Denmark live in co-housing, where you do obviously have your own home, but you also have access to shared facilities. You might have a shared meal once a week or more than that. You have company and community, help for the kids, a shoulder to cry on. I saw a film about co-housing in Denmark a few months ago. There's a woman there who was a single parent, and she said, I had a terrible divorce. She said, this co-housing community saved me really from very difficult circumstances, because she went into somewhere that had a really good quality, a really good network. So I would say it's not just about the qualitative aspects of the house as a physical artefact. We need to think about sociological quality when we think about housing, because this isn't a consumer product. This is a place for us to inhabit, and this is a place for communities to inhabit. And just a couple of final points. I also think, and I'm as much a part of this as all of you, when we produce housing, we want to do a good job and make it very sellable and all that, and be very pleased with it. But I think we're putting too much expectation on what a house can do. People now spend 90% of their time indoors, so we've got the whole wellness thing about buildings, and that's right. But I would say there is an option, which is to spend less time indoors. I'm a great walker, sailor, and just love the outdoors. We've got an outside swimming pool and an inside swimming pool at my gym. I swim outside. It's a much better experience than swimming inside. A building, to me, can never beat the outdoors. So I would say let's not put too much on buildings and expect too much of them. It's a behavioural thing that as we continue to industrialise as a species, we continue to withdraw from nature and into artifice, and we're expecting too much of artifice. It can never replace truly the natural environment. And then finally, I would say it's not just what we build, it is how we build it. I talked about meaningful work. We can't import pre-made boxes from China. It's a disaster. I saw a developer a few weeks ago who was very pleased with himself. He's going to be importing pre-made houses on big ships from China. It's game over for the construction industry if that starts to happen. So you can see why there are these strong currents against globalisation, and that's one current against globalisation that I would support. Quality in housing is not just about the product, it's about how you actually develop the product of housing, how you construct it, and whether housing development gives people meaningful work and satisfaction. Thank you.